This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
Yemen, which is often referred to as the happy Yemen, is no longer living a peaceful and comfortable life. Even the consumption of khat is no longer effective in easing tensions there. Meanwhile, the south is rising and the Houthis are not taking the road of consensus. Amidst this, the Al-Qaeda organization is exploiting the rising tension between the south and the north and is trying to impose a state of affairs in the country. The events in the past 36 hours are a warning of a hot summer in Yemen, and nothing out there suggests that the showdown will end anytime soon.
The happy Yemen is turning into a troubling Yemen after Yemenis have turned against themselves. The bombing on Friday outside the Ben Salman Mosque in the city of Saada came to give conflicts in impoverished Yemen a sectarian implication. Yemen, which has witnessed over the past few years attacks by the various Yemeni groups against foreign tourists, embassies, government institutions, and oil pipelines, witnessed for the first time an attack on a mosque. This latest attack shows the deep division between the Yemeni authorities and the followers of rebellious leader Abdul Malik al-Houthi. The group belongs to the Shiite Zaydiyya sect, which Sana'a accused of carrying out the attack on the Saada mosque. Since 2004, al-Houthi followers have fought the backed government forces in the mountains of Saada through ambushes and direct armed confrontations. The rebels are trying to undermine the government of Ali Abdullah Saleh, and they seek to bring back the 1962 Zaydiyya rule of imams. During the past 4 years of this conflict, hundreds of Yemeni residents have been killed and thousands of others have been displaced. Nothing has helped to ease the tension between the government and the rebels, not even the killing of Hussein al-Houthi, the founder of the rebellious movement, or the general pardon granted by the Yemeni President Ali Abdullah Saleh to all Houthis and their invitation to form a political party. All these, along with the Qatari-sponsored ceasefire agreement, have failed to end the hostility between the two sides. However, Friday's attack on the mosque indicates that Yemen is entering into a sectarian conflict in Saada, where a Shiite minority sect is trying to strengthen its position among the 20 million predominantly Sunni population of Yemen. In justifying their attacks, leaders from the Shiite Houthi group said they are fighting against the Sunni Salafi faction and said Salafi military officers are now fighting on the side of the Yemeni army. It seems that religious extremism is one of the main troubling issues in Yemen, where the country is witnessing occasional bombing and armed attacks. In addition, there has been a secret war raging between the CIA in cooperation with the Yemeni forces and armed fighters affiliated with Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda is capitalizing on the growing influence of extremists in Yemen and also benefiting from growing public anger with the government, especially in the provinces in what used to be known as southern Yemen. Yemenis have often taken to the streets to protest inflation and government control over the prices of food and essential goods, as well as the prices of fuel products. Such protests often developed into confrontations with no victory claimed by either side of the conflict.
Welcome back. The six world powers want to offer incentives to Iran in exchange for stopping its uranium enrichment program. But according to the speaker for the Iranian Foreign Ministry, Mohammad Ali Husseini, the incentives are not a priority for Iran. He expressed his country's rejection of any offer by the world powers that violates Iran's nuclear rights and interests. This position was matched by the supreme leader of the Islamic Republic of Iran, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. These world powers' offer was announced from the London meeting, but was not sent formally to Iran. 4 days ago, an Iraqi parliamentary delegation visited Iran to resolve the crisis in Sadr city. The talks were said to have been positive. But 2 days later, a large quantity of weapons were revealed with a Made in Iran mark. Afterwards, official authorities said that Iranian interference is playing a part in shaking the security of Iraq. This raises the following questions. What will happen after Iraq and the United States agree that Iran is a threat to the land of the two rivers? And what will happen after an Iraqi committee is formed to gather evidence for Iran's support of the militias? Faiza Alak reports.
The speaker for the U.S. forces and the speaker for the Iraqi government are standing side by side. Although this is not their first meeting, it is the first time that they are singing the same tune, confirming claims made by the U.S. that Iran is suspiciously involved in internal Iraqi security.
Regulating the relations with neighboring countries does not happen through inconsistent and contradictory statements, but rather by official and responsible means, whose top priority is to serve the interests of Iraq and its people. That's why the Prime Minister ordered forming a special committee to determine if there is Iranian interference in Iraqi affairs.
The meaning of this covert accusation is revealed in the released pictures of these weapons. Publicly and secretly, the source of these weapons is said to be Iranian.
There is interference by Iran, yes. There are weapons made in Iran, as well as an Iranian touch in the manufacturing of local weapons, explosive devices in particular. Sad to say.
In other words, the same three parties go back to exchanging accusations, but directly this time. The United States blames the Quds brigades of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard for training the Mahdi militia under the Shiite leader Muqtada al-Sadr. Meanwhile, Iran insists that the problems in the land of the two rivers are due to the U.S. disease. And between these two positions, Iraq's government chose to write a new page with Iran under the title of Revealing the Concealed. This new page might represent a new chapter in the relationship with Tehran. Noor al-Maliki now has an opportunity to prove what he has always said, that he is not Iran's man. But does this spare him from being described by Iran and its followers as the U.S.'s man in Iraq?
Iran's alleged interference in Iraq is a phenomenon that the U.S. Army aims to curb by pursuing the Mahdi militia. The U.S. forces announced killing 10 militia members from the Sadr movement. 6 were killed by an airstrike in bloody battles in Sadr city, and the 4 others were killed during clashes in the El Mansour neighborhood. The clashes continued all night in Baghdad and left more than 40 people injured.
Calm has returned to Beirut after an evening which witnessed security tensions between loyalists to the Future Party, headed by MP Saad Hariri, and members loyal to Hezbollah and the Amal movement, requiring the intervention of military forces which contain the situation. The security breaches included the burning of a home and the firing of gunshots after an escalation of a verbal argument and an exchange of accusations between the loyalists and the opposition.
There were gun clashes in the streets. In these areas there are always problems and gunshots. Every day there are gunshots. Guards here and there, that's it. It all falls on the shoulders of the people. They cannot say anything or do anything. Cars are being vandalized and people are bearing the burden as life goes on.
With us from Beirut is political analyst Amin Qamouriya. Mr. Amin, everyone from the loyalists to the opposition agree with the statement, "I love you, Lebanon." However, they differ on how to love the country. What will be able to stop what is happening in Beirut?
Of course, what can stop all that is happening in Beirut is a political agreement and political dialogue. But it appears that even this is impossible amidst the current conditions and the crisis of a deep lack of trust. There is a feud taking place, which has been exploding in the streets of Beirut for a while until today. For the past 2 years and until this very hour, political tensions have escalated to the furthest limits, and there has been a prolonged political stalemate. There are sectarian and religious feuds. There are deep differences between the political forces.
But a committee has been formed by the members of the Future Party, Hezbollah, and the Amal movement to prevent such incidents like this one from occurring in the streets.
How can the committee be of benefit amidst political differences, which continues to escalate? Meanwhile, how can the committee be of benefit if statements made by Mr. Walid Jumblat, the March 14th forces, the March 8th forces, Hezbollah or the Amal movement continue this escalation? What can the committee do even if it has authority amidst this huge feud which is taking place in the country, amidst a lack of horizon or any hope for a settlement? The internal situation does not facilitate this objective, neither does the foreign situation regionally, neither do those concerned with Lebanese affairs.
Now, reports from Jerusalem quote an Israeli official as saying there's been, quote, significant progress on the issue of future borders of a Palestinian state. The claim came after a meeting between the Israeli Prime Minister and the Palestinian President. An official at the talks said progress had also been made on security arrangements between Israel and the Palestinian state. The leaders' talks followed just hours after a visit to the region by U.S. Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice. Meanwhile, there are fears any progress towards peace may be jeopardized by a new criminal investigation into the Israeli Prime Minister's affairs.
This is the fifth investigation in the 2 years since Mr. Olmert has taken office. We've got to the stage that people in Israel are so cynical that they almost expect politicians to be involved in some kind of corruption. Having said that, obviously it is a big distraction. How can the Prime Minister really focus on the question of making historical concessions to achieve peace with the Palestinians when he's worried that the investigators could be back at any moment? And in fact, it has been made clear by the investigators that they do expect to question Mr. Olmert again in the coming days. It has to be a distraction.
Jackie Rowland there. Now, the UN says it will be able to continue delivering food aid to Gazans as Israel has agreed to allow through new supplies of fuel. UNRWA, the United Nations agency that provides humanitarian aid to the Palestinians, had warned it would have to stop deliveries for the second time in 10 days. This was because Israel was not letting in enough fuel into the Gaza Strip. But the agency says the new supplies will only last 20 days, and most Gazans will still suffer from fuel shortages.
It's not just the UN here who are suffering from the shortage of fuel. It's everybody else, vital public services, the agricultural industry, the fishermen. They've no fuel. Now, OK, today we're getting our supply, we'll be able to keep going, but that doesn't solve the problem here in Gaza at all. There was a special concession made for the UN operations here, just as there is a special concession for the power plant. But other than that, nobody else is getting supplies of fuel, and that's a real problem. It's affecting every aspect of human life here in Gaza at the moment. Well, it's getting worse every day. Now, on top of everything else, people have been reduced to walking, whether it's patients to the clinics, teachers to the schools, children to the school. That is if the distance is walkable. The university students are struggling to get into Gaza City for their education. I mean, it's affecting everybody, not to talk about the public services, the rubbish on the streets, the water wells that are not pumping, the raw sewage that's being pumped out into the sea. Now the estimate is that it's over 60,000 litres per day being pumped into the sea, simply because there's no fuel to run the plant that's needed to treat that sewage.
That was John Ging from the United Nations Relief and Works Agency. Now, fuel and power shortages are affecting every aspect of life in Gaza, hitting many businesses. And as Mike Hanna reports, one chicken farm is now about to take drastic action because it simply can't keep going.
The sound of tens of thousands of newly born chickens. This is a major hatching factory in Gaza. The live poultry distributed to smaller chicken farmers as well as to the general consumer. But the ongoing fuel and gas shortage resulting from the Israeli blockade of Gaza means the incubators cannot be used, the chickens cannot be kept alive, and as a result, there is no other option than to incinerate the factory's product. In the next few days, 500,000 chickens will be destroyed, having a major impact on farmers and for the society as a whole. This, according to a Ministry of Agriculture official, is just the first stage. Poultry is one of the main protein sources for the Palestinians living in the Gaza Strip, says Dr. Ralph Iqilshawi, and the resulting shortage will seriously affect the quality of life, and the problem will get even worse in coming days. The continually deteriorating humanitarian situation in Gaza, the subject of several international meetings in recent days. The key, all agree, that Israel ease its ongoing blockade of the area, a step Israel says it will consider only if there's a complete end to cross-border action by Palestinian militant groups.
The troubles plaguing Prime Minister Ehud Olmert, and I'm joined in the studio by Jerusalem Post columnist Kalev Ben David. Kalev, welcome. Before we talk about the Prime Minister's problem, let's talk about the talks he held today with Mahmoud Abbas, the PA President. Mark Regev, the spokesman for the Prime Minister, says significant progress was made. In fact, he says these may have been the most serious talks to date. What can you tell us?
Well, there have been some reports coming out that the progress has been mainly on the border issues. And as you know, Prime Minister Olmert made a recent visit to Ma'ale Adumim, in which the mayor of Ma'ale Adumim, Beni Kasriel, got the impression that Olmert was actually talking tachlis, as we say, about border areas in and around Ma'ale Adumim. So it's quite likely that that's where any progress has been made. Don't forget, George Bush is coming back, and the U.S. administration has been pressing for a declaration of principles to be issued prior to his visit. So that's another area where they might be making progress.
All right, to Olmert's headaches now. Is it too early to start writing the Prime Minister's political obituary?
Well, you know, I've written it so many times and have been wrong. I guess it's too early, but there is something different here. You know, there's no way. Look at the incredible timing of this police investigation just days before the big 60th anniversary celebration. So if there is no fire behind the smoke, it's going to end up burning the police badly. So you have to presume that they have some evidence. Of course, there's a gag order on the specific charges. Some rumors have leaked out, but we can't discuss them. But clearly there is something different this time.
His coalition is getting smaller as the days go by. How much of his future depends on Shas and labor?
Well, certainly labor is the key, even more than Shas, because you know, it's always possible they could, even if Shas should bolt, that they might find a new coalition partner if they, for example, moved forward on the Palestinian negotiations. They could try to bring in Meretz. But labor is the key. Ehud Barak has previously said that if there would be an indictment or a police recommendation for an indictment, that he would bolt the government. So really, I would say Ehud Barak and also Tzipi Livni, the foreign minister in Kadima, they hold Olmert's future in their hands, and they have to make a decision, especially if we see, for example, as has been rumored, maybe a police recommendation for an indictment come out.
All right, and there have been some reports that the Bush administration is worried, with Bush coming here next week, that a weakened Ehud Olmert is going to slow down the peace process. Those concerns justified?
Oh, of course. You know, there was Henry Kissinger who once in frustration said there are no foreign politics in Israel, foreign policies, there's only local politics.
The Israeli Air Force newspaper reported that Israeli pilots participated in supporting the forces loyal to Imam Badr regime in the fight against the Egyptian army, which was deployed to Yemen to support the revolution in the 1960s.
According to the paper, the Israeli pilots carried out many air runs above Yemen, during which it dropped weapons and munitions for the loyalists of Imam Badr in an operation dubbed Salsa.
لم تعد الصلصة مرتبطة بالأطعمة فحسب بل هي اسم.
Salsa is not exclusively connected with food. Rather, it's the name of one of the most secretive operations in the history of the Israeli Air Force. According to the Israeli Air Force newspaper, the theater of operation was in Yemen, where the paper reveals the Israeli Air Force carried out 14 air runs during which it dropped weapons, military arsenals, medical supplies, and food to assist the forces loyal to Imam Badr, the last Imam in Yemen in its war against the Egyptian army. The paper published pictures of the Israeli pilots and some top-secret documents next to photos of some of the Imam Badr loyalists and Israeli weapons in their storage facilities. This expose has even affected the Israeli military analysts in Israel.
أثار الكشف حتى المحللين العسكريين في إسرائيل.
It's a very interesting operation from a military perspective, especially that it took place in the 60s and from a distance of 2,200 kilometers. The planes were not as developed then as they are today.
Israel supported the war waged by the allies of Imam Badr against the Egyptian forces sent by Jamal Abdel Nasser to support the Yemeni revolution in the 60s. Israel thought this could play a part in exhausting the Egyptian army and stop it from carrying out a war against Israel. From here, a relationship was formed using mediation by a group of British military commanders in Yemen.
Israel wanted to take advantage of the fact that that group began a war with the Egyptians, who were our enemies at the time.
The Israeli army's role in Yemen might have played a part in the defeat of the Egyptian army in June of 1967. If confirmed, this operation shows Israel to have adopted the saying, "The enemy of my enemy is my friend." It would have also succeeded in penetrating the Arab world in the early 60s to face the growing influence of Abdel Nasser. This raises the question, how deep is this penetration in the early part of the millennium, now that the Arab world has split into two camps, one that is moderate and the other that is attached to the so-called axis of evil? Elias Karam, Al Jazeera, West Jerusalem. According to a recent report by the World Bank, the tightened siege over Gaza has led to catastrophic effects on the Palestinian economy. 69% of all industrial operations have been halted in Gaza. The gas crisis is growing. The occupation continues to prevent fuel and cooking gas from coming into Gaza, and the lives of Palestinians continue to become more complicated and difficult. The following report sheds light on a new kind of suffering in the Gaza Strip.
A gas canister no less than 18 kilograms is supposed to be here to cover the needs of Musa and his family of 5. He tried to make do with this small canister, but it did not even last him 2 days.
I swear to God, it's been 17 days without gas. Who do I turn to, and who do I complain to? Asking for help from anyone but God is humiliating, so I start using firewood. We use it to warm a glass of milk, or fry some potatoes, or something for the children. Who can we turn to?
The situation becomes more difficult than one can imagine, and the situation takes this family back to ancient times. The mother uses firewood to make a fire and fry some potatoes for her children. She substitutes potatoes for other foods that require a lot of fuel to prepare.
We are forced to do this because of the lack of oil and gasoline. The tight siege is affecting all Palestinian people, particularly in Gaza. I feel like the mother of orphans. My sons and daughters tell me, "I want to eat, I want to drink." I tell them, "What can I do for you? There's no gasoline. What am I going to cook with?"
The most significant restrictions imposed by the Zionist occupier over Gaza in 2008 were as follows. January 17, 2008, the only electricity generator in Gaza was shut down, leaving Gaza in darkness for 4 consecutive days. March 18, 2008, until present day, preventing the entry of even 1 liter of fuel to any of the gas stations. April 2, 2008, preventing the entry of diesel into Gaza. April 9, 2008, closing the Nahal Oz crossing and preventing the entry of cooking gas. As for Gaza's fuel needs, they are as follows. 350,000 liters of diesel, 120,000 liters of benzene, 300 tons of gas at least, 400,000 of industrial diesel to operate the central electrical station. But amidst this darkness and suffering, the Palestinians still have faith in their Arab and Muslim neighbors, especially the Egyptians, to open the passes and break the siege. This family is one of hundreds of thousands of Palestinian families in Gaza forced by bitterness to taste more bitterness. Abdullah Mustajad, Al-Aqsa Television, Gaza, Palestine.
عبدالله مرتجى قناة الأقصى غزة فلسطين.
ولنجاحات تونس. الكلام هو للرئيس الفرنسي نيكولا ساركوزي.
The French president, Nicolas Sarkozy, visited Tunisia for the second time in less than a year. The economy was a major topic during this visit, as well as nuclear cooperation for peaceful purposes. However, one can't escape the need to talk about human rights when it comes to Tunisia. Will economic ties between the two countries take a precedent over human rights? To talk about this topic, we have Samir Suba from Arabiya's magazine and the representative of the Tunisian Democratic Progressive Party, Omaya Al-Sadiq. Welcome to both of you. Let us begin with the article that was published in the Tunisian newspaper Al-Shrouk, which will lead us to the discussion about Sarkozy's speech. He said, "I came to express my appreciation and support to Ben Ali and the success in Tunisia." Mr. Omaya Al-Sadiq, is this support of a regime that has been ruling the country since 1987?
1987 أستاذ أمية صديق.
هذا حسب رأيي تدخل في سيادة الشعب التونسي وفي حقه في اختيار من يحكمه.
In my opinion, this is an intervention in Tunisian internal affairs and the Tunisians' right to choose what kind of government and society they want. We do not want foreign countries to interfere in our internal affairs regardless of whether they are friendly or unfriendly countries.
الداخلية للبلد. ولكن إلى حد الآن في ظل وضع تونسي خطر جدا ووضع تونسي يمكن أن يتفجر في أي وقت.
However, the situation in Tunis is very dangerous and it may explode at any time. The social situation in Tunisia is very bad. An entire village in southern Tunisia sought political asylum from Algeria because its residents were no longer able to provide an honorable living for their families in Tunisia.
تستطيع أن تؤمن لنفسها ولأسرها ولأبنائها شروط العيش الكريم. في تونس هناك وضع اقتصادي كذلك خطر جدا.
Also, the economic situation is very difficult despite what we hear from Nicolas Sarkozy and despite everything we read in some newspapers which receive aid from some governments. The inflation is 6% in Tunisia, which has failed to achieve self-sufficiency. This inflation does not promote stability in Tunisia. There are big challenges.
6%. هناك وضع في عجز عن الاكتفاء الذاتي وغلاء معيشي لا يسمح بالاستقرار وببقاء الاستقرار في تونس. هناك تحدي.
No government that can't achieve consensus among the different segments of the population and parties could ever face these economic challenges and maintain stability in the country.
اتفاق ما بين شرائح المجتمع وما بين مختلف التوجهات السياسية أن تواجهها.
لكن هل الوضع الاقتصادي هذا السيء
Doesn't what you said about the economic problems contradict the fact that 5 French companies are opened on a daily basis in Tunisia?
في تونس.
في تونس هناك.
We can say that Tunisia has 2 economies. One is called the offshore economy, which enjoys tax-free privileges and is prospering. The other one is the Tunisian economy, which can potentially improve the country's capabilities and provide citizens with an honorable living. These issues are not grasped by those who rely on newspapers and magazines to get their information.
Get more news about the Middle East online at linktv.org/mosaic. The Mosaic webpage offers a complete archive of Mosaic programs, program transcripts, the Mosaic video podcast, and the Mosaic Intelligence Report, a weekly analysis of the hottest stories from the Middle East. The views expressed on Mosaic are those of the participating broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. The production of Mosaic is made possible with the support of viewers like you. Thank you. This program was brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. television network devoted to global and national news, with uncompromising documentaries and diverse cultural programs. Programs which connect you to the world.